Hello, my name's Beck and welcome to tier ranking Brandon Sanderson. I have not done a tier ranking video before, but I thought because I've read pretty much all of Brandon Sanderson's work that this would be a fairly easy one for me to do. So I'm going to go over what my favourites of Sanderson's books are, what few I haven't read, because surprise, I haven't read all of them yet, and what I thought about them in general. So let's jump into the video, shall we? So I have God tier, amazing, enjoyed, not bad, and unread. So those are my tiers. God tier is the ones that I gave 5 stars, but also really thoroughly loved over the others, because I know I've given a bunch of books by him 5 stars and they have definitely deserved it, but some of them are just a little bit better 5 stars than others. So let's jump in. I am going to start with the first Stormlight book, Way of Kings. So The Way of Kings, I remember loving it and I gave this a 5 stars, but it is not quite God tier because I know that I loved Words of Radiance and I loved that more than the first book, and I also loved it more than Oathbringer. So I think that is a decent rating for the Stormlight archive, at least so far, because obviously I haven't read Rhythm of War yet, it's not out, so I can't really rank them against each other yet, but Words of Radiance has definitely been my favourite of the books so far. I have given them all 5 stars though, which is why the other 2 are in amazing and not just enjoyed. Enjoyed is like 4 stars and below. I might contest that later in the video. We'll find out. Let's go with the Final Empire next, because this is the first Mistborn book, and I actually just enjoyed that because I gave it 4 stars. So I liked it, but I didn't love it. I wasn't obsessed with it. So I feel like I can't put it in amazing and I can't put it in God tier. I can put The Well of Ascension in enjoyed as well. Do I want to put it in amazing though? It's not quite amazing because I didn't give it 5 stars. I gave it 4.5. I gave The Hero of Ages a 5 stars though. So that is definitely going up in God tier because I remember driving home, listening to the audiobook and my mind being blown. So that is definitely up there. Between Words of Radiance and Hero of Ages, which one do I like more? That's really hard. I might put Hero of Ages in front. Will it go? Yes, there we go. So yes, okay, that looks standard. I did like Way of Kings more than Oathbringer, and I liked Will of Ascension more than Final Empire. Okay, those are all in order now. So let's go into Alloy of Law, straight to God tier. I like this series more than Mistborn apparently, because this is Era 2. I didn't think that would be the case, but I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, so I can't really ignore that, can I? So Shadows of Self I didn't like as much. I can't remember if I gave it a 5 stars or not. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 4.5. But I did like it more than the Mistborn books as well, because it just seems to flow faster because it's got a different character aspect at the core of it, and the first trilogy is slower but slow burning, and then the second trilogy is more fast and action packed. So that's a hard one. Shots fired on this trilogy. Anyway, Bands of Mourning, again, I think I gave it a 4.5 to 5 stars. If it was a 5 stars, it was a deserved 5 stars, but it wasn't like a new obsession 5 stars. I think I liked the first book out of that series so far more. So that's how we're going to leave it for now. Let's get into Skyward and Starsight, shall we? So I liked Starsight less than Skyward because I found that it just did the formula of Skyward again, but in a different kind of setting. Obviously I'm not going to say spoilers because that's mean. So Skyward was like God tier because I was obsessed with Skyward. I remember adoring the way that Spencer was developed as a character, but then with Starsight it was just enjoyed. I think I gave it a 4 as well, but it wasn't like a 3 or 3.5. It was still a 4 because I like what Sanderson is building up, but it wasn't as good as Skyward was, at least in my opinion. Let's do Elantris. This is just not bad, which I'm probably going to get people disagreeing with me, so I'm sorry, but Elantris is one of the books by him that I didn't love, and that's the same with White Sand. I gave both of them around a 3 and a 3.5 stars, but for very different reasons. I just found, because I read the Stormlight archive first, which is not a place that I recommend to start because it's just so rich with world building, and Sanderson has really found his stride when it comes to his writing style. With Elantris, because it was his first book written outside of him writing The Wheel of Time, because he wrote it himself and it was his first foray into plotting everything himself, I found the plot twists were still surprising, but they also were not as tight as his later work, and I was used to his later work before I read Elantris. So it's not a bad book, I just read it in a way that I shouldn't have. I read it after I read his most detailed work, which is probably a mistake. So it's going in like the 3.5 pile along with White Sand. And White Sand is actually also a written work in Arcanum Unbounded, and I preferred it much more as the written work than I did as the comic book. My nose is itchy again. This room is a curse. Okay. Because the way it was in the comic book in the volume that I read, I've only read the first volume, so I can't talk to the rest of them, but the first volume just seemed to have an unbalance of writing and picture. They're supposed to work together to convey a story, but because Sanderson is very word heavy, I found that I struggled a lot with White Sand because it was overloading me on story and the writing, and then it wasn't really conveying assumptions, I guess, in the drawing aspect of it. I read a lot of comics and I like drawing myself, so I might be a bit of a higher critic than someone who's just picked it up for fun, because I've made comics in the past. Obviously none of them on the internet because they're not good enough, so you know, I can only critique it to a point because I'm not a published comic artist. But yeah, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, I think, from memory. It was a bit of a letdown to me, and then I gave the story of his in Arcanum, I gave that a 4, I think. So I liked the written version better. I think that's just where his strength lies, but I would like to look into White Sand again eventually in the future, because I imagine that I'll enjoy where the story is going, but I just felt a little let down by the format and by the art style, but I think the art style changes. But as this stands, Arcanum is up here. Arcanum is in enjoyed, because even though some of the stories in here were very weird, they're all Cosmere stories, I did like it, and I liked The Hope of Elantris the best. That was a really good one. And also Legion of the Emperor's Soul, which is actually here as well. So I might put that in enjoyed, but I'll put that in front of Arcanum because I enjoyed it more. This book is confusing because it says Legion and the Emperor's Soul, but Legion is actually a separate story and Emperor's Soul is a Cosmere story. So Legion is the first book in the many lives of Stephen Leeds, and that is an adult sci-fi story that is a series of 3 novellas. And so the first book is published as a collective with Emperor's Soul, and they don't really align whatsoever. I think at that point they just needed to publish a bunch of stories together, so that's what they did. But they don't have any kind of correlation whatsoever. So I really loved Legion. I think I gave it 4 or 5 stars. And so I think having Emperor balance it out and sit between Starsight and Arcanum Unbounded, I think that's a good spot for it to sit. However, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds, I'm going to put it into amazing, because obviously I adored this book and I didn't expect that Sanderson will come out of left field and surprise me with a sci-fi the way he did. This is just a really interesting take on having different personalities manifest and then solve crimes, and it was a really interesting way that Sanderson explored that, as well as with time and other potential sci-fi things lending to the story. So I'm putting it up here in amazing because I think it deserves to be here. Steelheart is also, I want to say it's amazing, but also is it God tier? Because I was obsessed with this and I didn't see any of the plot twists coming, which is fairly unlike me because usually I can predict stuff, but I didn't see anything coming in here. Ooh, I'm so conflicted. Okay, well, it wasn't better than The Way of Kings, so I think that's how I'm going to decide it. I might just put it in after Bands of Mourning because I liked those books better than I liked Steelheart. Yes, I think that's a good spot for it. And I liked it more than Stephen Leeds, I think. Maybe it just belongs on the end. I'm going to keep it on the end for now. No, I'm putting it here. I'm putting it in front of Stephen Leeds. Yes, I think that's a solid spot for it to go. Okay, let's move on before I change my mind. Firefight to me wasn't as good, and neither was Calamity. And then there's a short story called Mitosis as well that goes in between Steelheart and Firefight. So it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, unfortunately. I was a little let down by the ending. It wasn't as cataclysmic as I wanted it to be, but I did enjoy the series. It was like a dark X-Men story. I'm just circling my mouse. I need to move on. Right, I need to leave them there. Snapshot is going to go straight to God tier because this is a book that I think I gave it like 4.5 to 4.75, which in retrospect, it made sense at the time, but now I think it's silly because I should have just given it 5 stars. Snapshot is such an underhyped novella that he's written, and it's about these 2 detectives who go into a snapshot, which is like a frozen part of time that is replaying the previous day so they can solve the crime that obviously they are tasked to solve because they're detectives. So it's a really interesting character exploratory thing. It's a really interesting sci-fi aspect, and the plot just surprised me at multiple points, and it's such a short book, I didn't expect that to happen. So if you can pick up Snapshot and you haven't read Sanderson before, good place to start as well. And Warbreaker. I really enjoyed Warbreaker. I liked it more than Elantris, but I liked it not as much as the Mistborn trilogy, and I didn't like it as much as Starsight, but I liked it more than his other books here. So I might have to put it up here because Warbreaker and Elantris are the two places that I recommend people start with Sanderson, but I didn't read them first and I should have. So that's why they're going a little bit lower, because my expectations of Sanderson were already elevated and these were his more beginning works, I guess. So not to say they're not enjoyable, but I just read them in the wrong order, I guess. So if you're looking to read Sanderson, start with Warbreaker or Elantris, because Warbreaker ties into the Stormlight archive, so it's a good stepping stone point because you can read it as a standalone and then pieces of it are mentioned in the Stormlight archive. Next is The Rhythmatist, and this is a middle grade mystery series, again with another complicated magic system as Brandon is known for, so it's like a higher middle grade, I guess. But I'm just gonna give it this not bad rating because, oh, maybe I'll put it in enjoyed. I'll put it in enjoyed because I liked it a lot, but I wasn't, obsessed with it. So I think that's a decent place for it to sit, and I think that's a good spot for it to sit in regards to everything else because, I think I liked it more than Calamity though. So yeah, bye Calamity, you're at the very end, sorry. And now I'm at the books with Sanderson that I haven't read yet. So I'm just gonna shove them in here. So Alcatraz and the Evil Librarians. I know that's another middle grade series by him. I've gone to look on Audible for the books and I can't find the first book and it's very frustrating. It just doesn't seem to be as popular of his series and it's out of print or something. I'm not sure, but I can't find it and I really want to read it. Sounds like it would be a lot of fun. So I'm just disappointed that I haven't been able to get onto it yet. Maybe I'll find it at my library or an ebook or something. I don't know. I've got to read it somehow. So if you know, please tell me because I really want to read it. Next is Children of Time, and I think that's his Magic the Gathering book, and I'm not really into Magic the Gathering, so that's probably going to remain unread, unfortunately, unless you think I should read it, because if it aligns with my interests of like his other works, which are awesome world building and stuff, then I might like it, but I don't know, I'm on the fence. Infinity Blade is another one, and I think that's about gaming. And I don't dislike gaming in books, but I don't know how I'd feel about it. I think it's tied to something else. Maybe it's got a sequel that I'm thinking about. But yeah, I'm not sure about this one either. So Perfect State is a novella, and I'm just looking at a synopsis that says it's action-filled and it's about privilege, culture clash, and expectations. And I don't actually know whether that is a genre of sci-fi or something else. I imagine it's sci-fi though. But obviously I've not read that one either. There are a few Sanderson novellas that I haven't picked up yet, and I only really found them on his website. I haven't really seen them talked about very much, so I doubt they've been published in a collection of any kind, just because they're so different, but I would like to get to them eventually. Dreamer is apparently a horror story, which I had no idea about, but Sanderson knows how to write a good twist, so maybe I'll consider getting that one as well. Short horror story, that's all I know about it. I'm not a huge fan of the US covers. You can see for the rest of my tier ranking, I've used all of the UK covers or the Australian covers, but I don't know what it is. I just don't like them. They seem very chunky and I don't really like faces on covers, which is silly given Firstborn, but I've always thought that face, even though I know it's supposed to be Vin's face, I've always thought that looks like Jensen Ackles. Is anyone with me or am I just crazy? And then Defending Elysium is another non-Cosmere short story, and it's apparently published on his website, so I should probably just go and read that as soon as I can, really. I imagine because of the title Elysium that it's a sci-fi novella, so I'm interested. I've loved his sci-fi before with Skyward and Snapshot, so I don't know why I wouldn't love Defending Elysium as well. And then Firstborn, I believe, is another sci-fi, and it is available on Tor.com, which is his US publisher, so I think it's available for free. So again, another book that I should go and look into. I imagine it's also a sci-fi novella. He seems to write shorter sci-fi novellas and then save his fantasy for his longer works, but he's starting to branch into sci-fi, which I'm enjoying. And I know eventually the Mistborn series will be a sci-fi because that's the direction he's going with the multiple eras in the same world. And ironically, I realized that I saved the book called Firstborn for the last book that I tier ranked, but let me know what you think about these tier rankings. Have I ranked something high when you thought I should rank it low? And please tell me what your favorite Sanderson book has been so far as well. I would love to know. I kind of expected that my top ones would be these ones, although I'm surprised that Snapshot is in my God tier. I thought it would just be an amazing, but I put it up in God tier because it deserves it. I'm really excited for Rhythm of War. I imagine that will either sit in amazing or God tier, depending on whether I give it 5 stars and I love it as much as Words of Radiance, because I obviously gave Oathbringer and Way of Kings 5 stars as well. There you go. That is my tier ranking of Brandon Sanderson's books. I'll chat to you in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.